The US system is designed to do nothing. All right? So that means to get something passed and to become a law, you need a majority in the House, you need a supermajority in the Senate, and you also need the president to sign it. Right? And that's aside from other institutional constraints like the committee system and so on. All right? So when the Democrats hold a majority and the Democrats hold the White House, the US system is going to restrain their agenda. All right? That's just the way the system is. That's the way the founders intended. What we do in this study is to try to ask the question, why? Why has the institution evolved to look the way it does? And so what we do is we examine two much maligned aspects of the US political institution, the supermajority rule and the delegation of authority to bureaucrats. Right, both of these can be seen as undemocratic. The filibuster rule, in that it's not respecting majority rule, it's not representing the people as well as it should, and the delegation to bureaucrats who are unelected. All right, so it's often asked, why is authority delegated to these sorts of people who aren't elected by the people? What we find is that these two components, the supermajority filibuster rule and the delegation of authority to unelected bureaucrats, on their own kind of seem very undemocratic, but together, right, they work in such a way that their interdependence actually leads to better policy outcomes than we otherwise would achieve. What most analyses or most commentary on the gridlock misses is that there's a lot of action happening in the background. All right? And what we're trying to point out is a lot of this action is happening via delegation. So Congress may fight, they may not be able to agree about whether the tax rate should be a little higher or a little lower. But what they can agree upon in a world that's changing over time is that they want policy to be smoothed out, in a sense, to not change too much as the world changes, to react to the changing world. Right? Because one thing that politicians like, particularly incumbent politicians, is they like the status quo. Right? They like the world to not change because that world is what got them elected. And so as much as they can, they'd like to keep the world the way it is. Gridlock serves that purpose. And so to that extent, it's kind of locking down the world or locking down some policies for the interests of these policymakers. That allows deals to be made in Congress. And what we're trying to show in this research is that delegation is a way that Congress can overcome the problems of gridlock and get deals done. So to take a recent example, we can look at the Dodd-Frank bill, where lots of authority was delegated to the financial regulators. Now, that may have been a puzzle. Why didn't Congress? There's nothing more salient or nothing more important in the last 5 years than financial reform. Why didn't Congress figure out the answer themselves? What they did was they delegated authority to the regulators because they didn't know how the world was going to change. What Congress people could agree upon is that they wanted to find a solution. And they didn't know what it was, and they didn't know what it would be tomorrow. But the deal they struck was to delegate that authority to a regulator who had different preferences to them. So it may seem undemocratic, but it's those different preferences that allow the deal to happen. Yesterday, Democrats and Republicans agreed something needed to be done. They could agree, they didn't know what it was, but they could agree to delegate authority to that agency. Tomorrow, when the agency starts figuring out what the answer is, Republicans or maybe Democrats don't like it, but they can't backtrack. They can't roll it back precisely because of gridlock. Gridlock has its pluses and has its minuses. All right? It does stop things from happening and it frustrates a lot of people. What we're trying to show here is that gridlock may not be as bad as it seems, and that other aspects of the political institution go a long way to solving the problems or solving the inefficiencies of gridlock.